Hey, welcome back to the conversation with Lisa Davis, MPH. I hope you enjoyed the first half. Second half is it gets fun, if it wasn't fun enough. But leave us a like, give us a share, help us promote positive feed activation for other people who you may want to hear or see this show because you were kind enough to give us a comment. All right, on to it.
My daughter has something called NVLD, nonverbal learning disorder, which is a horrible name because this is a kid who's exceptionally verbal. Like she was talking in full sentences before she was one, but they have social skills gaps, fine motor and gross motor skill issues, math issues. And, so in elementary school, she was always pulled out of class. And she also has ADD and dyscalculia, which is a math dyslexia. It's a real thing. And then she also has the NVLD. You know who came out last year or the year before with NVLD? Chris Rock. Yeah, he had a friend who was like, dude, I think you're on the spectrum. So he did 9 hours of testing and they're like, no, you have NVLD, which is similar. So some people call it Asperger's cousin, even though Asperger's technically, they took that out of the DSM and now they just call it autism spectrum disorder. And we thought she had autism for a long time, but she doesn't.
Asperger's is no longer an official diagnosis. I didn't realize
it's really
that.
stupid. I don't know. So now
NVLD is on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
It's not on the spectrum, but it's kind of like you think of it like a cousin. That's how one pediatric neurologist I talked to. And I thought that was a good way. So she, I would say, has a little bit more going socially, but still sometimes just feels like I could just go up to a group of girls, at least by middle of high school, and just start talking. She can't do that. She gets too overwhelmed. People have to talk to her. And then she's a little quirky. And, I see the way kids treated her in elementary school, the way they treated me. I saw the way they treated her in middle school. And now she's in 10th grade. And she said, Mom, I feel like I walk around the school with like weirdo painted on my head. She's super pretty. She's super kind. She dresses really cute. So it's like, even with that, it's interesting that kids can kind of sense like there's something different about you. And her psychologist was telling me that, and this might be interesting to parents, that if you have a kid who's clearly different, like let's say you have a kid that has Down syndrome or you have a kid in a wheelchair, if you pick on that kid as a kid, you are just
you're an asshole. Yeah,
like,
everybody's going to come to the defense.
He was in a car accident. He's in a wheelchair. But if you look normal, so quote unquote normal, or even attractive,
then you're weird,
act a little odd.
Yeah,
right. And so she does have a very small group of friends, thank goodness. But yeah, it's really rough. And then the other thing, the last thing I'll say with NVLD is that this is actually in the description of the disorder, which is so crazy. Has trouble learning dance steps. And my daughter, all she wants to do is show choir, like Glee style. She can't. She just can't. Like if I was like
can't choreograph.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, her brain would be like 1, 2, 3. Like everything just kind of turns around. She did get into the play. She's going to be in Mamma Mia. She's in the ensemble. She just started. Everyone on the director, the dance, they all know that she has an invisible disability and she's going to do her best. And I don't think they're going to kick her out or else, trust me, I'll be down there.
You'll have a problem. Yeah.
They will have a problem. But I'm just saying, like, it's so painful to see your kid. Like you hope they can be treated better than you were. And it's just sad that it's not happening yet.
This could be an interesting tie to ally. Well, it is an interesting tie to allyship. And I wonder if it's one that'll help people who don't get it from a race standpoint connect to it. Being an ally for your child. Like, how do you think about being an ally for your child and letting her grow up and expose her space and be her? But then how do you show up? Like you just mentioned the director and they know. Did she tell them? Did you two have a conversation? Like, what is that being an ally for you?
So glad you asked that. No, everything always goes through her. Everything. And I'll say, Hun, do you want to because she'll say, Mom, I'm nervous because, about I have to tell them about the NVLD. I say, okay, do you want to tell them? Or would you like me to tell them? And sometimes she's like, I'm going to tell them. She's become a really good advocate for herself. Like you should see her in her IEP meeting. She's like, you know what? They're not giving me enough time on this math quiz. I'm on an IEP. I have learning differences. And she says learning differences instead of disorder. And this is what needs to happen. Like it's amazing. She really comes alive.
It's almost like the way you used to stand up for other races. She stands up for herself. Yeah.
No, she's like a little mouse. And I'm like, you got to get out there. But that's another thing. But no, it's really good. So she asked me, she said, could you email the producer of the play, the director, and the dance director? And I got the nicest emails from all of them saying Lila she is an absolute sweetheart. Like she just is so kind-hearted and she tries really hard. And they said, we're so glad you let us know. We're going to keep an eye on it. And one teacher, the dance teacher, was like, oh, does a video work for her or one-on-one? I said, no, she's watching a video. It's not going to work. She has to be like one-on-one, very slow, or maybe you can video something, send it to me. I can learn it and then I can show her, although I got coordination issues too. But yeah, I think teaching your kid to be an advocate for themselves and then not always, like I used to overstep, I'd be like, oh, I'll just take care of it. Oh, I'll just take care of it when she was little. And now it's like, okay, no, she's old enough now to say, listen, I want to tell a teacher myself, or, I want you to come with me. If it's an in-person thing, I want you to come with me in case I don't explain it right. Cause sometimes she gets nervous and she has a lot of anxiety. And so just having that backup, but yeah, work with your kid.
I think it's an important point about allyship because most people want to speak for themselves, even if they can't. Like, even if I don't have the authority in a room to speak up for myself, I want to be able to. Or even if there's a time where it would make way more sense for Keith to speak on my behalf because people are going to listen, I might concede it, but it still bothers me that it has to be that way. But I think it's really important that you at least realize.
In that situation, it's still super important that Rodney relinquish that versus a common allyship overreaction is let me do it, and versus giving space. So we talk about this in our training a lot. Like if there's seemingly something that's awkward or a situation, and we have an example back when we went to a bar one time and Rodney got told to leave because he wasn't wearing the right shoes. So we went down the street. He and another white buddy switched shoes, and guess what? We all got in. And I wanted to lose my shit. Now this is 22, 23-year-old Keith. Right. Drinking, I used to just lose my shit all the time. But Rodney said, don't. Let's go inside. It's not worth it. And
I want to have a good time with our friends and not end up in jail. And let's be honest, which one of us is going to jail?
You.
Like,
yeah, I speak up, Rodney's going to jail. And so it was a huge moment for me to, like, there are moments where it's like, you have to do it. Maybe you do it privately. Maybe you do it one-on-one. Maybe it's one of those situations where you take an opportunity to explain without using that person as the scapegoat. But at the same time, like, it's that permission. So I am curious, like, in this, talking about parenting, like, as a mom, you see your daughter have NVLD, you see your daughter have the math
ADD
dyslexia, ADD. You want to protect her, kind of going back to the anecdote of the parents last night. Like, you want to protect her, but you also want her to take care of herself. Like, how have you found that balance?
It's very difficult. The area I've struggled most is friend making. Like, there'll be I'll meet somebody and they'll have a kid who also has a learning difference. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, you guys should get together. And she's like, Mom, can I make my own friends? I'd like to make my own friends. I'm like, I know, but he would get you because Mom, I want to make, and so the big thing in the house is like, Mom, butt out. My husband's like, hun, butt out. There's a kid down the street right now. I'm struggling with it. Like, he's creative, he's into art. I don't think he has any learning disorders, but like I know his mom and he's super understanding. He's really cute. And, I was like, oh, they could go out. No, just stop it. If they want to text each other, which they have, but like, I still want to add more. Like, by the way, she, da, da, da. You guys would really enjoy going to da, da, da. And I've done that before and it always blows up in my face, but I'm just being honest. It's like I just want her to be happy so much. And I just feel like I just want to do anything I can. And I mean, she had a boyfriend for a while and he was great. And, his parents messed that up. It's a long story. I kind of messed that up, and they're still friends, luckily. But if we had all just butted the fuck out, who knows what would have happened? And it's just hard, right? Because he has high functioning autism, and his parents overheard him talking with her about sex. And I'm very sex positive, and I'm like, if they want to have sex, it's fine. Just she has, birth control. We got the talk. We have had the talk, but like really like. But they were like, you can't. He was 18, she was 7. You can't you can't have sex with somebody who's under 17, even though it's legal where we are, whatever. That's fine. But it just kind of blew up because then I got involved and it just turned into a big mess. And if we could just let them have their conversation and not gotten involved, things would have been a lot better. So, but yet I'm still struggling. That's what's so embarrassing.
Well, before we go there, Keith, there's some good stuff in there. Like, the honesty of trying to find that balance. And there's also the fact that different people and different children in this instance learn from different things, different degrees of pain or different degrees of like seeing it for themselves. And yeah, so I respect all that that you just said, because I'm just I'm actually thinking back to my siblings. Like, we all learn so differently. And so I don't even know how my parents managed that, because we all figured it out, but it's a real struggle.
Yeah, I used to have trouble with and I still do sometimes. If you spell something to me, like someone's last name, that's hard. Like I don't know that name. I can't keep up. Like you'll be like, it's Liftre, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
I have this.
oh God, the worst thing is I worked one summer as a receptionist for my dad in his ophthalmology practice. It was a nightmare because people would be like, Mr. Papa Dukas something called, and I'd be like, wait, wait. And they'd like, are you listening? Are you dumb? Are you, they weren't that rude, but it was, I told my dad, I was like, I can't do this. Number one, I hate filing. Number two, I can't take messages correctly because it's just the way. So I obviously have some kind of processing issue. And then I haven't been tested, but I'm positive I have ADD because my husband has it. My daughter has it. I can only excel at something I'm super interested in.
Something that just happened real quick. You just said, you just when you referred to yourself, you referred to it as a processing issue, versus when you're talking about your daughter, you said learning difference, and she came up with that term. I really like that term because, like, at the end of the day, we don't, culturally, at least like what I've witnessed personally, we don't have a very healthy. I don't have a very healthy take on the difference between like a learning disability or disability or a difference. And at the end of the day, we all have them. Like, we all process, like people who are extremely good at math, they have a learning difference, like, which probably affects other things that they're not good at. And if we could just see that we probably all have some kind of a learning difference.
Listen, I think, you talk about compassion and you talk about parenting. We all have learning differences. Like, and as a parent, especially a baby boomer parent, right? Like, I'm coming in a lot more authoritative than authoritarian. I'm coming in to say, this is how you do it. If you have 5 kids, it's hard to accommodate each difference. If you're a teacher and you've got 30 kids, it's hard to accommodate each difference. But the reality is, we all learn a specific way. I definitely learn better when you associate to things that I'm super interested in. If I am not super interested in, pretty much going to disconnect. I don't just learn anything because I just don't care. But at the same time, that doesn't, you can't not necessarily accommodate it all, but we can have that better perspective, because then we label it as a learning disability. And it's like, no, and just, why is it a disability? It's just different than you.
That's why my daughter always said the difference. She's been saying that since like 2nd grade. She's very smart.
I was reading a book about, I think it was about the brain and behavior and like developing minds. But one of the first things it called out is that there is no clinical definition of mental health. We have definitions of mental illness. So like, we don't even have a functioning, working definition of what it means to be healthy. We just know what it looks like to be weird, different, other, disability. And so I think it puts us at a real big disadvantage because we're all searching for normal, and we don't, and we haven't defined that normal is actually different.
Normal is a social construct developed by those in power to maintain power.
So is whiteness.
I mean,
yeah. 100%.
I love taking it there.
But you talked about being sex positive, and I think this is one of those areas of thought. I mean, we've had an amazing opportunity to get to know who you are. Mm-hmm. Like, how have you maintained, and what does being sex positive look like for you? Yeah.
Well, sex positive to me means that you accept that teenagers are sexual beings. They're interested in sex, and to try to act like if you don't provide them with condoms or birth control or have sex educators, I used to be a sex educator, come into the school and talk to them, that it's all just going to go away. Like, teenagers don't have the idea to have sex until you came into the school and told them to. Like, it's all your fault, you dumb sex.
I know, right?
Or the fact that under George Bush, the second one, only abstinence only, were funded, right? And when I was a sex educator for a wonderful organization called Health Quarters, which is still in existence, it's kind of like a Planned Parenthood. We'd have abstinence as part of the offerings, but we'd also talk about condoms and barrier methods and hormonal birth control and non-hormonal, the whole thing. And so for me, when she says to me, "Okay, I'm ready to have sex," I'm like, "Are you sure? What do you do?" I mean, I might say, like, with her, if I say, "Are you sure?" she'll be like, "Mom, you're not. Don't you trust me?" I mean, there's a whole nother issue with her, but it's that emotionality. But I think in general, just accepting and preparing them. Like, do I want to just go sleep with any random person? No. I guess I'm not that sex positive, but because I don't want her to get hurt. I also don't want her to get pregnant. And she really doesn't want to get pregnant. So it's like, my husband and I are like, if you have sex, you have to have 3 forms of birth control. 3. Either a hormonal or a condom and spermicide. Or now we tried the hormonal. That was a nightmare. Now we're going to try a barrier method, which is either a cervical cap or a diaphragm, and a spermicide that goes inside the cap, and a spermicide that goes inside your vagina, and a condom. And if the guy you're seeing agrees to that, then that's great. But I've had people who've gotten pregnant with condoms that break. People don't know how to use condoms correctly. You have to squeeze the tip of the condom. You just put it on and the air is up there. It can burst. You also should use a lubricant, because that's going to help. Even if it's a lubricated condom, even if you're super excited, you should still use a lube. So that's what I mean by sex positive, is listening to where they're coming from. Now, if you have a kid who's like, "I'm super unpopular and I just want to sleep around so I get popular," that's a different issue. But if you have a kid that's like, "I really feel ready emotionally and mentally, and I've thought about this," I think that's a different situation. But you have to talk with your kids about it, or else the parents talk to their kids make better decisions than the parents who don't.
I would take it a step further, and I think sex positivity starts at a really early age.
Oh yeah, masturbation.
I was gonna go. I hate you.
Were you really?
We twin brain a lot, Lisa.
We're like that's a real twin brain moment.
Well, I totally interrupted you, Keith, because I just wanted to. I totally forgot. Oh, and masturbation is like 100%. Just go do it in your room.
Yeah,
not at the table. Okay, got it.
And I think like sex positivity is promoting the natural existence of our sexual experience, as well as all things around our genitalia, especially in Western society, right? Like, we have friends who are aghast that my 2-year-old plays with tampons and knows what they are, and my 4-year-old has, that knows what they are and how they function and what they're for, right? It's like, why wouldn't we? And you hear stories of parents who see their 3-year-old or 2-year-old going through the phallic stage and touching themselves because it feels good or it tickles. And it's like, "Oh my God, don't do that." And it's like, no, do that. Like, I mean, that's part of your development and your growth, and having that healthy sense of physical connection to anatomy only leads to the ability to have easy conversations around sex, because it's kind of just part of what you know. versus, and then you make healthier decisions, better decisions. You think about it in a healthier way versus it being so taboo. And then who knows where it goes.
Well, so I think I've come full circle on this because like I did not grow up with that kind of that take on like, call it body positive, body aware, like whatever you want to call it. And then now with our daughters, we very much talk about the parts, like, and I see it as just it's informative. Like, this is your anatomy, this is your body. Like, if you had an issue, you should be able to articulate like where the issue is and like how you're feeling. But then also there's safety. Like, hey, only mommy and daddy, and if grandparents are over, should ever be touching this area. And if someone does, you can talk to us about it. Like, establishing a relationship and rapport and trust, and letting them establish a relationship with themselves. And which is super new for me. At the beginning of this, when we were talking about sex positivity, I was getting ready to say, like, I want to be sex positive, but I am undoing the negativity that I grew up with around it. And I don't even know if negativity is the word I want to use. I think my parents grew up in a generation that it was taboo and it was embarrassing. And I don't think I don't think it's bad per se. It's what it was. And so they didn't have a frame of reference for talking to their son about sex or masturbation or like, and it was like they grew up in like a super religious framework, which is also like, no, you don't even talk about it, bro. And so like I have all of those layers of that stuff in here that I'm working on and just having conversations with my wife about. And I think,
and I feel that because like I have a hard time, if you're, daughter, like when my daughter asks, oh, what's that? Maybe it's a shower or in the bathroom. Just saying the word penis is like super uncomfortable for me. And so like trying not to be
it's a horrible
uncomfortable
word.
and
Let's just be honest. Men got the worst anatomy. It's the ugliest thing on the planet. And then that word is just not the best. No, it's just not.
It's not a good word. But we are super about like, this is what it is. Like, you have a vagina. I have a penis,
my youngest
like,
has gone lengths to help me with it because basically when I strip down and take a shower, she just points and laughs. she's like, I don't really. She just laughs, and just like she's like, "What's that?" And she's like, "What's that? That's different." I'm like, there it is. I know it's bad.
Well, I was just going to say that when your daughters are teenagers and they're involved with somebody, it's so funny because so my daughter, to make a long story short, there was a guy that she was seeing and he was far away, but he was visiting. And my husband texts me and he's like, why does he have his shirt off? And you ask him, he's super sex positive. And I'm like, because they're going to go swimming. Like we finally got a pool. It's a whole nother lifelong dream of mine. Anyway, happiest childhood memories in a pool because my mom's she didn't feel in pain and it was happy. And anyway, so pool is like everything to me. Anyway, so I'm like, they're going to go swimming. He goes, I don't know. This seems weird. Who comes to someone's house, takes their shirt off, they're sitting inside. And what are they doing? There's a blanket. And I was like, hun. And we had to talk about it. He goes, I did not expect myself to react this way. Because our daughter's super open. She told us, she's like, we're going to be, they didn't yet, but she's like, at some point we are going to be, having sex and we're this and we've talked about it and the whole thing. And he's like, it just shocked me. Because I'm like, yay, this is great. Being sexual is fun.
What you're saying reminds me of something. Sorry, real quick. There's this, somebody said on one of our podcasts, Keith, they said, their best friend said to them at some point, like, there's going to come a point in our relationship where I will let you down and you will let me down. And like a twist on that is there will come a time where your child will have sex.
Right.
And
That's right.
because many of us can't come to terms with that, we can't be there for them to help them. And I think this actually also leads into abuse because we haven't helped them understand what's happening, and then they can't talk to us about it because we haven't built that framework. But then like it also flips. Then when you're older and they're older and they're like, our parents have, like, yeah, that's how you got here. Like,
that's so funny that you say that because the other day I was like, we usually would kind of just sneak around and stuff because she always seems to be everywhere. And we're very close. We spent a lot of time together. And I was like, hon, your dad and I are going to go and we're just going to have some pride, just dad and mom time. We're just going to, hang out, whatever. And so I said, you can't disturb us. She goes, oh my God, you guys, why are you telling me this? I was like, well, when that guy was visiting and you told me the door's open, but still they were figuring out a way to do some things. They're like, don't come in. So I'm like, okay, well, you got to deal with it, right?
You got to respect our boundaries too. And we're communicating and and that's kind of a healthy, hey, we do things, you do things,
right?
Versus this weird one way.
Ultimately, the Western mentality of shame on sex, it's just so unhealthy for our you talk about mental health, our positive mental health as we get older. The amount of shame I have felt around sex my entire life, even up until about a year ago. And that's a whole different train of conversation. But it's real, and it affects your relationships. It affects how you raise your kids. It affects all of these things that don't need to over the most basic of mammalian animal instincts is to procreate. And
if you taught them nothing, they would do that on their own.
That's right. Exactly. They wouldn't know how to speak. They would know how to eat, drink, and have sex. If there are 3 things that you learn to do, they might not even learn to pee correctly, but they will learn to have sex.
Well, it's funny because it wasn't like the conversation. Well, number one, I couldn't get a date. So my mom never had to talk with me, ever. And my sister, when she started dating, then she was dating a guy who was a couple years older. And I think she was 16 or by then. My mom took her to get the pill, but there wasn't a big long, but she was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. There was no pushback from it. It was just like, okay, let's go to Planned Parenthood, But the funny thing is, once I went to college, I remember my parents, we had dinner, my sister was there. And my mom's like, Lisa, get a diaphragm. And my sister was like, Mom. And I just laughed because that's the only thing she ever said to me. Because I guess in college, guys got interested in me. I'm a late bloomer, but it was just kind of funny that's.
You're not a late bloomer. You bloomed when you were supposed to.
Thank you. I always felt like a late bloomer, but
I think what my new call in life, Keith, because I need a new cause. I don't have enough stuff on my plate.
You don't have enough stuff.
Destigmatizing just being a damn human. Bodily functions are just not allowed.
That's what compassion's all about, man.
I know.
That's what we're all about, which leads to our final question that Rodney always asks, but I am going to ask today because...
before he asks it, because I don't know why he's taking my question, so I'm not going to let him. So, see, look at this. I'm standing up for myself in this moment. I'm going to say first, Lisa, you are amazing. And, thank you for sharing all this. It's a lot. And I think it's helpful for me, so I hope it's helpful for other people.
Thank you. This was super. I mean, if you guys ever want a third once in a while co-host, I just love you guys. This is so much fun.
Well, thank you. We'd love to come on your show too.
Oh yeah, we should do.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
Before we do ask that final question, where can people find you?
Oh, please! I highly encourage you go to LisaDavisMPH.com. Super easy, www.lisadavismph.com. I have 3 shows. I do Active Allyship. It's more than a hashtag. I do Talk Healthy Today, which is through outside media in their Healthy Living group, which involves Clean Eating Magazine, Yoga Journal, Muscle and Performance, Better Nutrition, Oxygen. Yeah, so I do. So my other passion is healthy living. So you have to have me back. So we'll talk about that. And then I do a show I've done for 8 years called Naturally Savvy. It's a Naturally Savvy podcast. It's based on the very popular site by Andrea Donsky, naturallysavvy.com. Check them out as well. And and Andrea co-hosts with me on that. And then I co-host with Sunny, and then Talk Healthy Today I do solo. But I love it. I mean, that's my passions, just being a good person, helping other people live healthy, not being a racist, talking to your kids about sex. I guess that's, Oh, my book, Clean Eating, Dirty Sex. It's a memoir, cookbook, healthy lifestyle guide. It's not about dirty sex. It's a play on words. See, I thought people would get that, but a lot of people don't. If they get that, they'll laugh.
They think strawberries are involved.
It's
chocolate.
You think sex
it's legit. It's legit bait.
But it's honestly even if you're celibate for whatever reason, it's just basically how to live your healthiest life with the emphasis on ways to improve your sexual health too.
Love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, thank you. We will reference Lisa Davis, MPH.com in the notes.
Yes.
And the final question is, what does compassion mean to you?
Compassion means, that's such a good question. I keep getting stumped. I don't know. I think of like kindness, openness, wanting equity for everybody. What I want to do, which I'm not as good at, is lending compassion to people that I don't agree with. And that's where I struggle. So I would like compassion to be finding space in your heart, even for people who you find very troublesome. And it doesn't mean you have to love them or be your best friend, but, want them to find, I don't know, it's hard. See, like if you're an anti-vaxxer, I'm like, just go away because I don't feel like getting COVID, right? So that's a whole nother topic, but I'm just being honest. I have a master's in public health. I'm sorry. I'm very science-based. So for me, it's like this whole thing of there's all these divisions. And what I want compassion to be is that we can all find some kind of common ground. That's my ideal. And I'm still working towards it.